I've had a lot of comments and requests lately that's either asking about hunting private land versus public land, or suggesting that I talk about private versus public, or stand selection for private versus public, or difference between the two. And a lot of comments and questions along those lines. So I thought, hey, that's a great idea. Let's talk about private land versus public land. That is an interesting topic. But as is so often the case, when I really started thinking about this, what I realized is that it all comes down to the two most basic fundamentals of hunting. And that's hunt where there's game and hunt efficiently. Or at least the two most basic fundamentals that if you want to be successful at hunting, you need to get those two right. Now, the first one, hunt where there's game, and that's so obvious I probably shouldn't even have to say that one. Well, we all know that. But there's a lot to that, and when you add that with hunt efficiently, there's a balance there. And you really see that on private versus public land. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, private versus public land. But we're going to talk about it in the context of those two fundamentals. And when I say fundamentals, a lot of what I've been trying to do in my own personal life with simplifying things and so forth is to get back to the basics, the fundamentals. And by that, everything we do in life, there are certain things that you have to get right. And if you don't get those right, everything else just falls apart afterwards. Kind of like the foundation of a house. If you don't get the foundation right, it ain't going to work. Well, hunting's the same way. And the two most important fundamentals that we need to build everything on is hunt where there's game and hunt efficiently. So we're going to dive deep into these two today. We're on a piece of private property here, a place that I've been to many times and hunted for many years. And I talked about this place in the video on losing my range and hunting spot. And I'm not even going to get into all the drama that was going on in here then. But this property was just transferred to my friend, and it's his now. Well, he's in here making a lot of improvements. He's setting up a range, rifle range. He's doing all sorts of things in here. And he's been in here hog hunting a lot. Okay, well, that's one of the primary differences between public and private right there. Okay, in my area at least, we have a lot of private land, and I mean a lot of it. The problem is there isn't much game on most of it, not much at all. So the key to hunting public land in my area is to cover a lot of ground until you find those few spots that are holding animals. All right. With private land, what you got's what you got. This piece of property's it. I can't go on the property next door. That's somebody else's private property. So with private land, you have to focus on making it the best it can be. So you want to do everything you can to increase the number of animals on your property, food plots, making sure they've got cover, security, that they feel safe there. And on private land, you can do improvements that will benefit game and therefore the land support more game. And this place in particular, there's a lot of natural features in here that hold game, so even without improvements, this place has always held game. Even if we don't do anything, there's a lot of everything. We got a swamp bottom on the right and high ground on the left. Improvements are just going to help it hold that much more game. Well, that goes right back to hunt where there's game. And if you're in an area, public or private, where there's game, it's going to make things better. And I know, again, that's common sense. But I'm going to explain at the very end why that's so important, because now we're going to get into the part that isn't so obvious, which is hunt efficiently. Part of what made it so great where we were just at on my friend's property is that place could be hunted efficiently. And it is a great place, trust me. I've hunted it for over 30 years. I've hunted it there since I was a teenager. The field that you could see there, it stretches out across the middle of the property, and it's roughly 500 yards long. It lets you cover the entire property. And the way that property just happened to have been laid out, and I'll bring up a photo here, satellite image. There's raised railroad tracks on the backside. And they're raised because that's all swamp bottom, so they wanted them elevated. And then the front of the property, you've got public road, and then just the topography itself with everything across the road is very steep ground. So anything traveling on that property is going to cross that field, or almost anything is going to cross it at some point. It allows you to hunt that entire property very efficiently, and we used to have a stand in the middle of the property where we could cover the whole field. It's 500 yards long. We had 200 one way, 300 yards the next. One person covering 500 yards of ground, that's hunting efficiently. And you don't have to be able to see a long ways to hunt efficiently. But it sure helps. That's why a rifle's more efficient than a bow. That's why it's easier to take game with a rifle than a bow. And out west, so many out there, they're on ridge tops glassing for game and then trying to get close to the game. Well, that's an efficient way to hunt out there. Now, public land, we can't make shooting lanes on public land. And that's why that's why you want shooting lanes. They extend how far you can see and shoot, how much ground you can cover, and they make hunting more efficient. Well, we can't modify the land, vegetation, so forth, where we're hunting on public land. But there are places we can hunt very efficiently on public land, like this pipeline right here behind me. That's over 1,000-yard stretch right there. Covering this, that is hunting efficiently. Well, that's something to always keep in mind too when you're hunting is, okay, am I hunting efficiently where I'm hunting at, or is there some place I could cover more ground? Now, there are different ways to hunt efficiently. You don't have to be able to see a long ways. Natural funnels. Perfect example. All a natural funnel does is, due to topography, vegetation, whatever, it's going to channel animals into a narrower location. All right, well, if you hunt that spot, that's hunting more efficiently, which is one reason so many bow hunters absolutely love hunting funnels. They're limited by range due to the weapon, but they can hunt areas where the animals are naturally concentrated. All right, so then they're hunting more efficiently. Well, that's a huge part of hunting, is hunting efficiently. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. Okay, it's where the two meet, hunting efficiently versus being where game is. Okay, this particular place here, you could hunt this pipeline, you can cover a lot of ground, you can hunt this extremely efficiently. Problem is, there's not much game here, almost none, very few. And the reason for that is because it can be hunted so efficiently. It's been hunted so efficiently for so long, there's nothing left here hardly. There's very few animals here. That's the downside to hunting efficiently. Okay, and then this gets back into the hunting where there's game. If the game's been wiped out of an area, does it really matter if you're hunting the area efficiently? All right, so let's go back to my buddy's property real quick. I just wanted to show y'all this pipeline and a good example of a place you could hunt efficiently on public land, and this is all public land. We're going to go back to my buddies real quick and finish this up, and we're going to tie the two together, the hunting efficiently versus being where there's game and where they're hidden, and the private versus public land hunting. We're back at my buddy's place, and like I said, he's got a lot going on in here as far as improvements and things he's doing, heavy equipment here, and plus he's hog hunting at night over a bait pile, so he's got blinds all over the place. And well, that's an efficient way to hunt hogs over bait at night, back to the hunting efficiently. But I've been hunting in here for over 30 years now, like I said earlier. Well, I've seen this place go through a lot of cycles. One year, this is the best place you could ever ask for to hunt. I mean, there's a lot of deer in here. It's a great place. You see deer absolutely every trip in here hunting. Only question is, how many are you going to see? Well, then somebody gets permission to hunt in here. They get permission from, you know, a family member, a friend of a family member. They would come in, oh, look, there's deer everywhere. And they would shoot everything that moved. They were having a ball. And they'd call their friends up, hey, come on over here with me. This is a great place. After the second season, the third season, they wiped out the herd. Because this can be hunted so efficiently, just like that pipeline on the game management, the animals in here would just get wiped out. So by the middle of that third season, there's no deer left. You don't see anything. So then they would quit hunting. And I'd always get tickled because every time they'd look around and say, what do you think happened to the deer? It must have been the coyotes. The coyotes must have wiped them out. That's what it was. And they'd quit hunting in here because there wasn't no deer. Nobody'd hunt here for a year or two. Herd, what few animals were left would start to bounce back. More would come in. By about the third season of nobody hunting, it was a pretty good place again. And by the fourth year, it was just outstanding in here. And then somebody else would come in, hey, look, there's deer everywhere, and just shoot them all. I have seen that play out so many times in here, I've lost count of what cycle we're on and where we're at in the cycle. Seriously. Okay, that's the downside to being able to hunt efficiently. All right, now public land. The problem with public land, or at least in my area, and as far as I know most public land, it never gets that down, it never gets a chance to recuperate from all the hunting pressure. And here, because this is the only spot you can hunt, being private, everybody, hey, there's no animals here, I ain't hunting here no more. And it would get a chance to recuperate, the herd would bounce back. It never happens on public, that's why it's so tough. And on public, all right, that pipeline I showed you, it's not a good place to hunt because the herd's been decimated to there because you can hunt it so efficiently. If you want to do well on public land, you have to find those few isolated spots that just, there's nobody's hunting. All right, that's where, and those hard to get to places generally, those overlooked spots are the places that it's just too tough getting in there or getting out with an animal. Well, once you go in there, if you start shooting everything, guess what happens to those animals in those isolated spots? They get wiped out. All right, so public land, you've already got not many animals. And if you start wiping out the animals and the few that are left, well, all right, that's why for myself, I'm very selective on what I shoot on public land, extremely selective. And that's because I know firsthand experience how quickly you can wipe a spot out. And when you're in public, if you're already dealing with the population not being what it should be. The last thing I want to do is wipe out the few animals that are there and make hunting just that much tougher. Versus if I can find a spot, one of those overlooked spots that isn't getting hammered by everybody else, I can go in there every year and take a couple of animals and it's going to remain a really good spot unless everybody else figures out it's a good spot. And eventually they will. I don't care if it's private, public, at some point somebody's going to figure out it's a great spot. And it's going to cease to be a great spot unless you own the property and you're managing the deer. The reason I mentioned all that because I said the two fundamentals for hunting, for being successful, hunt where there's animals, hunt efficiently. Well, there's actually three fundamentals. And the third one's you got to manage the herd. I don't care if you're hunting public land or private. And it's a whole lot harder to manage the herd on public, but you can be selective in what you're shooting. At least that's what I do. If you develop your hunting style based on those three fundamentals, hunt where there's game, hunt efficiently, be selective in what you shoot, manage the herd. If you do those three things, if those are the foundations for how you hunt, you're going to be successful, and I don't care what game animals you're hunting. Stand location, private, types of stand selection, private versus public. All the stand is for is to help you hunt more efficiently. If you're in a place you can't see very well, if you're elevated, now you can see a fish more, you're hunting more efficient. If you're in thick hardwoods, you get elevated, now you can't see as much because of the canopy and the trees and so forth, whereas if you're on the ground, you can see further, hunt on the ground. That's all it stands for, is to help us hunt more efficiently. Plus, they can make things more comfortable, especially a nice permanent stand on private property. But anyway, apply those three things. And if you do, and keep those in mind, and constantly think about it. And I'm the world's worst about not thinking about them myself. And that really hit me when I started talking about private versus public, or thinking about this video. Do those three things, and it's going to work out pretty good. All right, I hope that helps. And myself, I'm out of here. I did want to say real quick to Keith on our Facebook group, Keith, I saw those photos and your boys out there processing deer and so forth. I was really happy to see that. You're passing on some good knowledge to those kids. And that's some stuff they're never going to forget, some skills that they'll always have in the future. Yeah, way to go there, Keith. And myself, I'm fixing to go, me and Mrs. River, we're going to go watch the Gaithers this evening. So that's why I'm not hunting right now. She'd have been very, very not happy with me if I'd have got caught up in trying to track a deer halfway across the country and dragging it out of the bushes and ended up being late. So I'm fixing to go do that. And God bless. Y'all have a wonderful afternoon.